Hey everyone! If you're like me, those perimenopause symptoms are driving you crazy. Well, I've got a little help for you. All you need to do is go to my midlifewithcourage.com website, and a little box is going to pop up that's going to ask you if you'd like to get my free ebook called Balancing Your Hormones. It's a short little guide with tips that you can use throughout the day, super easy, to help you balance out those hormones through the things that you do. So check it out, midlifewithcourage.com. Now let's get back to the show. You are listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. This is where women in midlife come each week for inspiration, motivation, and sometimes a little education to help them flourish after 40. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Midlife with Courage. I am Kim Benoit, your host, and I am so happy to have you here. I'm also very happy to have my guest here today. Her name is Susan Snow. Welcome to the podcast, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Susan, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us where in the world you are and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, you got my name right, so that's
Yay!
cool. I am in Denver, Colorado, or just outside Denver, about 30 minutes south. I'm married. I have three wonderful kids. I am a trauma resiliency coach, a speaker, and an author.
Wonderful.
A little bit about me
Do a little bit of
currently.
everything. Yeah. Wonderful. Before we get into your story, I always like
Mhm.
to ask my guests, tell us about a time in your life when you felt the most courageous or you showed courage. And I bet you have a lot of them.
Oh, yeah. I think the one that stands out the most is being able to stand up in a courtroom and face my dad's murderer in his eyes
Mm.
and make a statement to him directly. So
Wow.
I think that was the most courage I could ever muster.
I bet. And why don't we just start because you were very young at that
I
point.
was, I was 17.
Yeah, so why don't you
I
just tell
was,
us your story?
yeah, well, I was 19 when I made that statement, but
Mhm.
still a kid. So when I was 17, my dad was a Los Angeles police detective, and he had gone to court the morning of October 31st, 1985, to testify in a court case that he was the lead detective on. And I had a normal teenage life. So I wanted to go to a Halloween party that night and begged my dad. And he was like, nope, not doing it. It's a school night. Don't want you out late, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan was that, I would come home from school, mom would come home from work, dad would go from the courthouse to go pick up my then 6-year-old brother from school. And that was great because once he got home, that was it. My plan went into place. I was going to get both my parents to allow me to go. And so I was getting ready for my night, and my mom had come home and she took her costume off because she had a costume party or a costume contest at work. And the phone rang. And I, of course, being a teenager, thought it was for me.
Of
So I
course.
ran across the room when phones were still attached to the wall and picked up the phone. And unfortunately, it wasn't for me. It was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. And at that point, my mom had come into the room. So I just handed her the phone and watched her talk to this lady. And I tried to listen in, but I just had to see her demeanor and her body language. And it told me that it was bad.
Mm.
So she got off the phone and she said, we're going to the school. And got in the car. It was about a 7-minute drive from my childhood home to the school. And it was a church school. And so it had a parking lot that was in the middle of the school. And we parked there, and the kids in after school care came out the back side of the school. So
Mhm.
that's where we headed. And we headed to the back side of the school. It was now nighttime, but it looked like daytime because there were so many lights from police cars lighting up the sky. And then there was an ambulance sitting in the street. And so we started heading towards the ambulance. Both of us caught wind of my dad's truck. So we started to run towards the truck. And as we got closer, that's where we saw glass on the ground and rounded the corner. And there he was
Mm.
by the truck, partially covered up.
Mm.
And at that point, I just stopped in my tracks, and my mom, she collapsed and started screaming.
Mm.
And being a kid, I could not comprehend what I was seeing.
Mhm.
So what I ended up doing is focusing on the ambulance. I was hyper focused on that ambulance. And I just kept telling myself, why isn't anyone helping him? Where is everybody? Why isn't somebody helping him? And two officers pretty quickly came up, grabbed our arms, and escorted us out of the scene and went into the school, into an office. And I sat down on a chair. I actually kind of fell down into a chair.
Mm.
And my mom got taken aside by some detectives.
Mhm.
I didn't know where my brother was. I didn't know if he'd been hurt. And I just sat there, just trying to process. There was so much chaos going on that night. And I heard two ladies in the office, and they were talking to one another. They worked there.
Mhm.
And the one said, Mr. Williams is deceased.
Mm.
And that's when it hit me. That's when my sky broke up. And I just like, I wanted to run. I wanted to run out of there and run as far away as I could. And unfortunately, my body felt like it was filled with cement. So I wasn't going anywhere. A little bit after that, my mom came up to me and she said, I'm sending you with a neighbor.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I thought, well, wait, I know I wanted to run out of here in my mind,
Sure.
but the kid part of me wanted to remain to be a part of my family unit. You know, I needed my mom. I needed to know where my brother was. I needed my brother.
Sure.
And I didn't get that. And my poor neighbor who came to get me knew my parents forever. You know, it's just a
Oh.
neighborhood thing. And I was friends with their daughter when we were very young.
Mhm.
And so she was trying to process everything that was going on. And
Oh.
here she has their teenage daughter in her house, totally inconsolable.
Sure.
And I had been dating this boy. He was 19 at the time, and we'd only been dating 3 months. But all I wanted was him in that moment. Like I
Sure.
needed my boyfriend. So I had her call him, but when she called him, she didn't give him any information.
Oh.
And he showed up and was like, get your coat, get your purse. What hospital is he at? Where is he at? Where's your mom? Where's your brother? You know, all the normal questions.
Sure.
And I could not say what I needed to say. It just was not coming out of my mouth. And it wasn't until he was so persistent that we leave that I blurted it out. He's gone. He's not coming back. And then I watched my 19-year-old boyfriend just fall to his knees and start sobbing.
Oh.
And both of us, being the ages that we were just trying to comprehend everything that was going on, navigate through all these different emotions. We didn't know what our next steps were. My neighborhood went from very quiet to being filled with police cars and policemen and
Mm. Sure.
women. We had helicopters overhead. And little did we know that we too were in danger, but that didn't come out until the trial.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, in the mid 80s, there was no talk of mental health.
Mm-mm.
There was no talk of PTSD other than people coming back from Vietnam and it was called shell shock back then. And even LAPD didn't have any systems in place to support children of fallen officers. They primarily had systems in place to support the widow or the widower. And when I finally did go home, there were, I can't even, there were so many people in my living room, and I didn't even know who they were.
Oh,
And at that moment, as soon as I saw those people, I just bolted towards my bedroom and I
sure.
just stayed there. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I had heard my mom in the distance. I still had not seen my brother.
Oh my gosh.
And I just hid with my boyfriend in my room until he left. And I could hear people talking to him as he left, but I was like, please, please don't come in here.
Yeah,
I don't, I just wanted a cocoon. It was the only thing that I thought that I could do is just cocoon in my room. And I don't know if I thought like if I stayed in my room and then I came out that all this would be over.
sure.
I don't, but I was still in shock, still processing, still trying to gather my thoughts and my emotions. And the next, well, during the night, I did hear my brother cry. So I knew that he was home
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that he was physically okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have anything in me to go and console him. I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so the next morning, I finally saw him. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning when we finally saw each other, and I was able to give him a big hug and
Mm-hmm.
tell him I loved him and that we were going to get through this together,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing myself if we were going to get through this.
Yeah. So did it happen in front of him?
It did.
Oh,
And my
okay.
dad saved his life in the
Wow.
process. So
Oh
what
my
he
gosh.
saw and what we saw were very different.
Sure.
And like I said, there was no talk of mental health back then. And everything that started to happen to me after that, because they didn't catch the men that were involved. And this was a planned out assassination of my dad
Wow.
for retaliation for testifying.
Wow.
So my dad was like, he was my best friend, literally. He was my protector. He was my voice of reason. Unfortunately, my mom and I had a very toxic relationship. And I didn't even realize how toxic it was until much later in life. But he was always, like I said, the voice of reason, the one that kind of kept me in check so that my mom and I would not battle.
Sure.
And yeah, teenage girls and moms battle. They do. We had other battles. And so I went through a very deep depression and I didn't know what depression was. And I had, now I know, suicidal ideation where I wanted to be with my dad. I didn't care how that happened because my safety net was gone and I looked out the window and all I saw were police officers. Even though there were tons of people, I still felt unsafe, which caused me to have anxiety and panic attacks. I wasn't sleeping because I would just re-record what I saw that night over and over and over.
Sure.
And this went on for a long time, and I did not know how I was going to deal with it. My mom kind of cocooned into herself. I mean, she had other things. Don't get me wrong. It was chaotic. There was a lot, but she did kind of cocoon into herself. And I got kind of pushed aside. Even when it happened, the media had ascended into my neighborhood as well.
Oh.
And so I could not grieve in private. There was always someone around me,
Mm.
which made me even more anxious as a kid, especially.
Yeah.
And my mom, so even the media, it took them a couple of days to even figure out he had a teenage daughter because obviously all the focus was on my 6-year-old brother and my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was feeling very not important in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So about a month after all everything calmed down, the funeral had happened, the men were taken into custody, all of the police presence went away. My mom came to me and said LAPD wanted to pay for us to go to therapy. And being a teenage kid, I was like, well, if you go to therapy, you're nuts. Like,
Sure.
you're crazy, but okay. I mean, I was living in a literal fog. So if you pushed me in one direction, that's the direction I would go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to verbalize all this stuff that was going on. And I was afraid to because I'd never felt this way before. And
Sure.
I thought, they're going to throw me in a loony bin if I tell them all the things that I'm feeling and thinking. And so when my mom voluntold us that we were going to therapy, I went and I met this therapist, this gentleman, and in hindsight, he was not trauma competent nor informed. I don't think he wanted to go into the weeds with me. I
Oh
really,
no.
he never asked me pertinent questions like, how did that night affect you? I know, and it
Wouldn't that be
sounds
like the first thing they'd
crazy.
ask?
I know, no. And so what he concentrated on was my relationship with my mom, my relationship with my brother, my boyfriend in school. And that was it.
Wow.
And I was not feeling confident and safe enough to even mention some of the things that were going on with me. So every week that I had to see this man for an entire year, I kept saying to myself, today's the day. He's going to help me today. He's going to say something. He's going to, like, we're going to have something, right? My mom was still kind of cocooning, so I was not getting any support and I was just craving it. I just was like, I wanted an adult to like be like, okay, Susan, this is what you're going to do. And I didn't get
Yeah.
it. And so a year after seeing him, he looked at me and he said, Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady. You're going to be fine for the rest of your life, and I don't need to see you anymore.
Oh my gosh, Susan.
I literally walked out of the office going, okay, I've snapped. I'm crazy. I'm going to have to deal with this by myself because even a professional can't help me. And even at a young age, what I ended up doing is hiding behind what people told me. So when people said, Susan, you're so brave, you're so strong, you're so this, right? I
Hmm.
created this emotional mask and I wore that sucker. I was like, no one's going to see the turmoil inside of me. Nobody's going to see what's going
Oh,
on. I mean, my boyfriend saw a little bit of it, but even I was afraid to tell him everything for the reason I didn't want him hightailing it out of there. I mean,
yeah.
considering everything that he was going through at the time with me, most 19-year-old boys would have hightailed it out of there.
Right.
So I just kind of stayed in fight or flight. I just stayed there.
Oh,
And I was in fight or flight for 14 years of my life, which looking back, I realized that it kept me from having true friendships, I was not able I have a chapter in my book called Rose-Colored Glasses because that's what I looked at life through. I could not because I was not healing myself, I could not recognize when friendships and relationships around me were not healthy, were not in my best interest to stay in.
hmm.
And so I allowed people to walk all over me. and never stood up for myself. And when people came to me and said, "How can I support you?" I pushed them away. And I said, "Nope, this is my burden. This is not yours. This is mine."
Oh.
And I did that for 14 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was in a world where I did what I was told to do or what I was expected to do by others.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I married the boyfriend, we're still married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask, I wonder if he's still around.
he is almost 40 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so weird to say that, I gotta tell you. So we were married, we had two kids, and we decided I had had it. I wanted to push that side of me, that part of my life away. I needed a break. I needed people not to know who I was because the story was so out there for so many years
Mm-hmm.
that people would know who I was, and they always looked at me like I was this little China doll that was going to break apart in a million pieces. And so when we got the chance to move to Colorado, we did.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was working as a hairdresser, and I worked at a salon that was close to Littleton, Colorado. And we moved here in April of 97. And April 20th of 1999, I was working that day. I had some clients in my chair and I had taken a break and went into the back room, and someone had turned on the little TV in our break room, and up popped the live coverage of the Columbine shootings.
Oh, no.
And as I was watching the TV, I started having flashbacks of
Oh,
the night my dad was killed. I
sure.
saw the school, I saw the ambulance, I saw the police cars, I saw all the things. But remember, I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life. So I didn't recognize what was happening to me as normal. Even my colleagues were confused because I didn't tell them my story. They had no idea. So they're watching me. I'm turning pale white, sweating. I'm in a panic attack, and they're totally confused. And so am I, because I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
But I did what I always did, and I put that emotional mask back on,
Oh.
and I went out and I did my client's hair the rest of the day with that mask on. Everyone around me was just, they were upset, crying, mad. I mean, you name it. The emotions were high.
Mm-hmm.
And I did my client's hair like nothing was bothering me. Nothing. It was fine. I was going to be fine. I'm brave. I'm
Yeah.
The minute I walked through the doors to get in my car, it all came flooding back. All of it.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was feeling the anxiety again. I was not sleeping again. I was suicidal again. And I was really struggling. I knew that I was spiraling. And it scared me because I really was in the mindset, I call it the dark cavern of I don't want to feel this way anymore, but at the same time, I have two babies at home that I can't leave. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had this like fight. And my husband, being the smart man that he is, saw what was happening. And he met me at the door one day and he said, "You have two choices. You're either going to get help today or I'm putting you in a hospital."
Wow.
And I said, "Okay." At that point, I was terrified. And so I put up that white flag. I was like, "Okay, I give up."
Oh my gosh. Did that kind of
And
feel like a relief? Like,
it did because someone finally like recognized something, right?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, finally.
Yeah, yeah. And even though I fought it, I went to the doctor, I went to a regular physician,
Mm-hmm.
and he immediately put me on antidepressants because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he handed me a business card and he said, "I want you to make an appointment with this therapist." And I laughed in his face. I was like, wait a minute. I tried this 14 years ago and it didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
So what makes you think it's going to help me now? And he said, honestly, you have no choice. Like,
Mm.
this is what you have to do. And I said, all right. And I made an appointment with her. And then the first 3 minutes, it was different. I felt
Mm.
different.
Good.
She was asking me pertinent questions. I felt like I could be vulnerable with her. So I told her everything I had gone through at 17 and what I was currently dealing with.
Mhm.
And lucky for me, this woman specialized in severe trauma and PTSD.
Mm.
So when I started to tell her everything that I had gone through, especially with my flashbacks,
Mhm.
she looked at me and she said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you
Mm.
have PTSD. And I was just like, what? I, I'm not in the military. I didn't go
Yeah.
to war. What are you talking about? And she said, no. She said, anyone who has gone through trauma can have PTSD. The thing you need to understand about PTSD is it's not something that just goes away.
Mhm.
It's something you learn to manage. And
Oh.
in that conversation, finally, I had my person. I had hope. I knew I could heal from all of this stuff that I had been dealing with emotionally. And I was so grateful in that moment that people were not giving up on me. They were like, "Nope, you're going to do this. Nope, you're
Yeah.
going to do this."
Oh
And
my
sometimes
gosh.
that's what it takes. Well, especially for me.
Yeah.
I need a little kick in the pants sometimes, but
You just have to find the right people.
yeah, and that is kind of my message to people who are wanting to start your journey of healing from any kind of trauma. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be as extreme trauma as mine,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It could be anything, childhood trauma, car accidents. I mean, you name it. Trauma is trauma,
Right.
and it's your trauma, and it's your healing, and it's not the therapist's healing. So,
Yeah.
the most important message that I always tell people is this, because there's so many times that I hear people say, I tried therapy and it didn't work.
Mhm.
And I said, well, it's because you didn't find your person.
Sure.
So when you are on your healing journey and you have gone through a particular type of trauma, you want to make sure that that professional, that spiritual advisor, that coach understands what type of trauma that is and is able to guide you in the right way in your
Hmm.
healing, and that you're able to be vulnerable with this person. You feel like this person is a safe space for you,
Hmm.
and you'll know that. And if you don't feel safe, next, it might
Yeah.
take you a few times. It might.
Yeah. I
But
was
again, it's important.
for sure. And I was going to say, I know our bodies tell us when something isn't right. So sometimes we don't listen to that
Mm-hmm.
little message, but in this case, you really do need to listen to that and
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, this isn't working out.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
know that, you're not alone. I know, believe me, all the work that I've done over the years, it's scary. It's probably the scariest thing to be able to be vulnerable with another human being.
Oh, yeah.
However, I will tell you that that one moment, that feeling that I could be vulnerable with this woman was a catalyst to the type of healing I needed to do and finding the modalities that worked for me in order to do that.
Mhm.
And so I had to be all in. You have to be all in. As scary as it is, I knew that I wanted to heal. I needed to heal. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a business owner, right? And
Hmm.
I had to be, I had to find my way so I could be the best at everything that,
Hmm.
down the way because I didn't feel like I was before.
Sure.
I felt like something was holding me back from that. And that was my trauma. And that was the pain that came along with the trauma. So
Mhm.
I think that's the most important message I can give people to give them hope in their healing, that you
Right.
can heal from whatever it is that you've gone through. And
Yeah.
it's important. It's really important to heal, especially now. The way the world is right now, it is sending people into, you know, and all of people's traumas are coming up. All of the feelings are coming up. And so now, especially now, is the most important time to start healing yourself
Yeah.
and do it for yourself, not your kids, not your wife, not your husband, not your cousins, like
Yeah.
yourself. Do it for yourself.
Yeah. I think, and maybe you found this, women, the listeners are generally over 35, 40,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like this time of your life, we start to focus on ourselves and
Yes.
kind of start doing things for ourselves because maybe the kids are out of the house, there's other things going on that we don't have to be responsible for anymore. Do you find that too, that sometimes women, we get to this point and these things, maybe a past trauma, this is when they start coming up for women?
Well, it's so funny. I've talked about this a lot. There's something about the age of 50.
Hmm.
So for me, when I turned 50, I knew if I was going to write a book, it had to be, I like literally drew a line in the sand. I'm like, I am 50 years old. I am going to write this book. I don't know how to write a book. I don't know the first thing about writing a book, but I'm going to do it. I'm going
Yeah.
to do it. And, the other side of that was I was mentally in a place where I had enough tools that whatever came up for me emotionally, I would be able to move through them and
Hmm.
not spiral. But it took me 4.5 years to write my book.
Mm.
And the reason is because I had to relive and refill and do all those things because I needed to be as authentic as possible.
Right.
And in being authentic as possible, not only was I telling my story, but I was also telling other people's stories in the process since they've been on my journey.
Yeah.
And so that can be very terrifying as well,
Hmm.
putting yourself out there and raw and authentic and vulnerable and all those things. But I knew that I wanted to do that, not just for myself, but there were people out there that needed to have, I felt like there was a message that needed to get out there to people. And so they can read my words and say, if she did this, I can do this kind of thing.
Sure.
And I wrote it to heal even law enforcement because there was a lot of anger and sadness around my dad's death just because of the way he died and
Sure.
because my brother was involved.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book and got it out there. And it was, you don't have to write a book, but there is a point in your life, you're absolutely right, where you get to be older and you start to recognize that, huh, I kind of want to feel better. Like
Hmm.
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, right?
Right.
And that's kind of where I was, and it started around 40. And like I said, it was like line in the sand at 50, and that was that. And I knew that I'm just, I always tell people like, I'm just the messenger, right?
Hmm.
I was given this to put out into the world for a reason, and I don't question it. And so a lot of people will get that too, where they're like, wait a minute, like I feel like I have this purpose, this message, this something I got to do. But
Hmm.
in order to do that, you have to heal. You have
Yeah.
to do it. Yep.
Yeah. There's no getting around it. You
No,
have to.
you have to heal.
And I think it's so brave. That is definitely courageous to share your story like that. And yes, it will help other people, but it helps you too,
Oh yeah. Every
for
time
sure,
I'm on a
Susan.
podcast, every
Yeah.
time I'm on a stage, I always learn something from someone else or even
Mhm.
just a little something more about myself.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. That's why I do these things.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. Tell us the name of the book and where people can get it if they'd like to get that.
It's called The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. It's currently on Amazon as a paperback book
Mhm.
or a Kindle. So if you're a Kindle Unlimited customer, you can actually read my book for free.
Oh,
All I
wonderful.
ask is for reviews.
Yes, leave her a review, people. That's the number one
Um,
thing to do.
and I'm currently in a studio right now doing my audiobook. So that's coming soon.
Oh, okay.
I will give you more information once that comes out.
Sure.
So I'm doing that by myself. Oh, yikes.
Oh my gosh.
It's a
So
whole
you
different
record.
animal.
Oh, I bet. I bet. But I love that though, that you're reading it your own book.
I am. I am.
Yeah.
I was going to hire an actress, a voice actress.
Hmm.
And the more people read my book, the more people were like, oh no, this is your story. This is, you know, they said, your voice is soothing, which I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. And so you should do your own book.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, it's a journey in itself. But yeah, so I do that. I also do, like I said, trauma resiliency coaching.
Hmm.
So I'm always looking to help more people. If any of your listeners want to do a free 40-minute discovery call with me,
Hmm.
I do have a website. It's susansnowspeaks.com.
Okay.
And you can go on there. I have information about my coaching, my speaking, and a little bit about my book on there as well.
Okay. Wonderful.
Or you,
Well,
or you can find me on Instagram or TikTok, either one.
all right. Well, we'll put a link to the website on the show notes so people can find that when they're done. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Susan. Is
Oh,
there,
thanks for
before
having
we,
me.
yeah, before we end, is there any one last little piece of advice or nugget of knowledge you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I always leave it with this. Just know that you're not alone. I think that was the most important thing that I needed to hear all those years. You're not alone. And you can heal. You can. I don't have any kind of you know, special sauce in me that allowed me to do this. We all have that ability within us, right? We all have it. So, like I said, make sure that your person understands your type of trauma and that they're able to interview them. You have the right. Ask them the questions that you need answered. So, if I can leave you with anything, just do that for yourself so that you're not wasting your time and you find your person a little bit faster.
That is such a good point. You don't have to just take whoever you get.
Oh,
Make sure they're the right fit.
absolutely.
All right. Well, again, Susan, thank you so much. And I hope that I get to talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Hmm. Thank you for listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did like it, I would love it if you would leave me a review, or even better, send a link of this episode to a friend. Until next time, take care of your beautiful self.